There are places on this earth that heaven has turned its face from. Rooms where light enters, but never settles. Spaces that once knew laughter now steeped in silence so thick it feels alive. And though the world rushes on, blind and busy, there are corners where time does not move forward, where the past stands still, whispering behind walls and beneath floorboards, waiting. And in one such place, a smile was born. Not the kind that flows from innocence, not the smile of a child looking to the sky. No, this smile was forged in stillness, in shadows, in rituals never meant to be repeated. It came not from joy, but from something older than sorrow, a mocking imitation of happiness, fixed, painted, and unnatural. It was the smile of the doll. The house was quiet, too quiet. It stood like a tomb dressed in timber and paint. The second floor cradled a nursery that hadn't been touched in over 2 decades. Dust floated like ghosts through shafts of gray light. The once pink walls had faded into the color of dried skin. Wallpaper curled at the edges like withered petals. And still, amid the decay, there sat a single rocking chair, upright, waiting. It had been Mary Ellen's room once, a child born beneath a sorrowful moon, to a mother whose lullabies were mournful prayers and a father who disappeared as if swallowed by the earth. Her mother, Eleanor Harrow, had been known for her music. But after the child came, the songs changed. What once sang of hope became dissonant, strange, and haunting. Her fingers moved, but the melodies were wrong, like hymns bent backward. And one winter's evening, the gift arrived, wrapped in velvet, bound in blood, red ribbon, and left at the doorstep without a name. No sender, no reason, only a single tag that read, "To the child who is never alone." Inside, the doll, porcelain, perfect, pale, her eyes a color that couldn't be named, as though they absorbed every hue and rejected them all. And her mouth bore that smile. Wide, unbroken, unnatural. It stretched too far, too symmetrical. A smile without origin, a grin that knew. Maisie, they called her. They placed her on the mantel in the nursery, a silent guardian. But something shifted. The air thickened. Dreams soared. The house moaned with invisible weight. Neighbors spoke of strange sounds. Laughter, soft footsteps, low humming at ungodly hours. The child would speak to the doll as if it answered back. And at night, when no one should have been awake, a lullaby would echo faintly down the chimney. The Lord declares in His word, "The eye is the lamp of the body." So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. Matthew 6:22. But the doll's eyes were not lamps. They were veils, blackened windows that led not to a soul, but to something else, something that mimicked life, but had no breath, no heart, no heaven. Then one day, Mary Ellen was gone. No trace, no struggle, no goodbye. Just an empty crib and the doll sitting in the corner, still smiling. Eleanor Harrow descended into madness. She tore the piano apart with her bare hands. She clawed at the nursery door until her fingers bled. But she never entered again. Instead, she sealed the room, locked it behind 6 bolts, and vanished from the world, her mind broken like the strings of her once beloved piano. Years passed. The house grew silent. But the doll remained. She waited in that rocker through storms, through rot, through the turning of generations. The world moved on, but the spirit in that room did not, because some things do not age. Some things are not bound by the ticking of clocks. As Ecclesiastes warns us, that which is already has been, and that which is to be already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. Ecclesiastes 31:5. But this was not God who remained. This was something God had driven away. But man, in curiosity and pride, had invited back. And then the house found a new name. The deed passed quietly to Clara Reeves, a distant relative unaware of her bloodline's curse, a historian by trade, a seeker by calling. She arrived with good intentions and eager hands, ready to restore what was lost. But she did not know. She did not know that some doors are not meant to be reopened, that some stories are not buried but entombed, sealed not to protect the dead, but to protect the living. She did not know that what waited in that room was not simply a toy, but a throne, a perch for an ancient watcher, whose only joy is the smile that never fades. On her first night, as twilight bled into blackness, she heard it, a thump, not loud, but deliberate. A single sound that pierced through floorboards and years of abandonment. Then came the creaking, 1, 2, 3 steps, then silence, heavy, listening. When she reached the second floor, she felt it. Not cold, not fear, but awareness. The air had density. The hallway seemed longer than it should have been. The nursery door, though locked for years, stood slightly open. The bolts rusted and broken from the inside. She pushed it open. Time died in that moment. Everything in the room was still, preserved like a shrine. The rocking chair moved slowly, as if stirred by breath that had no source. And there in the shadows, in that cursed corner of the world, sat Maisie, still beautiful, eternal, and smiling, not a smile born of delight, but of dominion. The smile of a thing that knows it will outlive you, that it has outlived others before. A smile without mercy, a smile that has seen generations kneel beneath it. It is written in Psalm 115:5, "They have mouths, but do not speak, eyes, but do not see. But this one, this doll, did see. And though it did not speak with words, it spoke with silence, and its silence roared louder than screams. Because some smiles are traps, some grins are cages, and some toys are not made by hands, but by something far more ancient. Something that once fell from heaven burning and found joy not in worship, but in imitation. And that is where it began again, with the smile in the dark. The first sign that the past had not died, but had been waiting. And now, it was ready to wear a new name. There are terrors in this world that don't wear the face of violence, but of familiarity. They do not run, they do not scream, and they do not chase. No, they wait. They linger. They embed themselves in the corners of memory, sit in the periphery of your vision, and smile like they've been here longer than you have been alive. Evil does not always come with fangs and fire. Sometimes it comes as a child's toy, sitting still on a shelf. Sometimes it comes with a painted smile that never fades. That's how it began. Clara had entered the house of shadows unaware that she was stepping into a threshold between the natural and the damned. The air had accepted her too easily. The walls had watched her too closely. And deep within the nursery, the doll, Maisie, sat like a sentinel of forgotten sorrows, unmoved, unblinking. But the moment Clara picked it up, the moment her fingers brushed that cold porcelain cheek, something crossed over. A transaction invisible to the eye, but thunderous in the spirit. She placed the doll on a shelf. She dusted it off. She documented it like she did any historical artifact. She tried to treat it as just another remnant of a life lost in time. But evil does not like to be cataloged. Demons do not sit quietly. The first few days, she noticed little things. Doors half opened, lights flickering, not just from faulty wiring, but in rhythmic pulses, like breathing. The doll would change positions ever so slightly, its head turning an inch to the left, its smile growing deeper. And the air, oh the air, it began to hum. Not with sound, but with vibration, like a low frequency of dread settling into the walls. It is written, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Say Ephesians 6:12. And Clara, unknowingly, had walked straight into one of those high places, an unholy altar hidden in a child's nursery, an old throne disguised as a toy, a cursed covenant wrapped in ribbon and smiles. Then came the dreams. The first dream was subtle. She stood in a long corridor where all the pictures had no faces. The walls bled faintly, and at the far end of the hallway stood Maisie, her eyes glowing faintly, not with light, but with memory. Ancient memory. The second dream, Clara was inside a room with no doors. There was only a single white chair. She couldn't move. couldn't speak, and on that chair sat the doll. But this time, Maisie blinked and whispered Chor, "She's still in here, but you have to open the right place." Clara awoke in sweat. Her sheets were torn. Her arms bore scratches she couldn't explain. There was blood beneath her nails, not hers, and the pillow beside her was slashed as if something with claws had tried to silence her. Each morning she awoke, the doll had moved again, from the shelf to the hallway, from the hallway to the foot of her bed. One morning, it sat inside her bathroom mirror, but only in the reflection. She turned, trembling, heart pounding like war drums, but there was nothing behind her. Yet in the mirror, Maisie remained, still, grinning. As Proverbs 15:3 declares, "The eyes of the Lord are in every place, watching the evil and the good." But this thing, this spirit, was not the Lord. No, it too had eyes in every place, but they watched not to redeem, they watched to devour, to wear, to replace. And then came the knocking, always at 3:07 a.m., not 3:06, not 3:08, 3 knocks, then a pox, then 3 more, as if something were counting, waiting, inviting her to respond. They came from the walls, from beneath the bed, from inside the closets. One night, they came from the bathroom mirror. She began to record herself while she slept. She needed proof that she wasn't losing her mind. The first few nights were uneventful, until the 5th. The video began as usual, Clara tucked in bed, still as a statue. But then the clock struck 3:06. The screen flickered, glitched, and suddenly she sat up, but her eyes were still shut. No dream could account for what followed. She turned her head slowly toward the closet, then toward the shelf where the doll used to sit. Her mouth began to curl, not into a human smile, but into that smile, the unnatural, stretching grin that did not stop. Her cheeks lifted far too high. Her lips split at the corners. Her expression became something worn, something borrowed. Then she spoke. Her voice sounded layered, like multiple tones whispering through her vocal cords at once. Sure. She's closer now. She just needed someone new to wear. The screen cut out. Clara remembered nothing. But the next morning, the doll was gone from its shelf and sitting cross-legged on the foot of her bed. Its eyes were now hazel, the same color as hers. Her reflection began to shift, at first subtle, a flicker in her pupils, a shadow behind her shoulders. Then it became more pronounced. She would blink in the mirror, but not in real life. Her reflection would smile when she wasn't. The house had become a temple for a grinning priestess, and Clara had become the offering. As Jesus warned in Matthew 12:43-45, when the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, "I will return to my house from which I came." The doll was not merely haunted, it was a house, a vessel, and Clara had become the doorway. Not everything that watches you while you sleep has flesh. Some evils do not knock to enter. They simply wait until you dream deep enough to let them in. And now the door had opened. There comes a moment in every haunting where the silence speaks louder than the screams, where the knocking ceases and the shadows grow still, not because the danger is gone, but because it has entered the bones. Clara no longer slept. She sat up at night, eyes wide, hands trembling, watching the corners of her room as if expecting something to bloom from the darkness. The walls had begun to hum again. The floors creaked without pressure. Mirrors reflected things that weren't present. And the doll was never where she left it. Each day, it moved closer. Each night, it stared longer. Its smile, unchanged in shape, felt deeper in meaning. It no longer looked like paint. It looked like a wound, a scar that stretched from cheek to cheek, mocking every ounce of peace Clara tried to hold on to. And then she found the wall. She hadn't intended to find it. But evil always leads its prey to the door it wishes them to open. It was behind a faded curtain in the nursery. A corner of wallpaper bubbled slightly, curled at the edges like dead parchment. Something drew her to it. She peeled it back slowly, breath shallow as if the wall were breathing with her. There it was, a seam not carved, not nailed, but sealed. A hidden door, maybe 3 feet tall, covered in old floral wallpaper. At its center, a handprint, not of an adult, a child's, faint dry, stained the color of old blood. Around the handprint, a circle of etched symbols, ancient, angular, unnatural. Language not written to be read, but to bind. She didn't know why she opened it. She didn't question the shaking in her fingers or the tears streaming down her face as she unlatched the old bolt. But somewhere deep in her spirit, she heard it chua. The lock is the smile and pain is the key. The door creaked open and the house exhaled. What lay behind it wasn't just a crawl space. It was a tomb of memory, a spiritual graveyard. The air was thick with decay, not of flesh, but of time. Dolls lay broken and scattered, their eyes gouged out. Children's shoes, faded photographs, a rusted music box that played no tune, only a scraping metallic gasp. On the floor, a ring of candles burned without flame, and at the center a crib. It was iron, old, blackened, its bars bent inward, as if something inside had tried desperately to escape. The mattress was torn, the fabric shredded with marks that did not look human. And above it, scrawled in a child's handwriting, were the words, Chor. She made me smile forever. A sob broke from Clara's throat, not because she understood, but because something inside her did. This was not just a room, it was a womb, a birthing ground for spiritual replication, a place where innocence had been twisted into imitation, where spirits once pure were warped into masks for something unholy. And then she turned. The doll was there, at the crawlspace entrance, no longer sitting, no longer still. It stood, its arms hung lifeless like a marionette without strings, but its head tilted all the way to the side, unnatural, broken, intentional. The smile cracked at the edges. Its cheeks split open slightly, revealing something darker beneath the porcelain. Not bone, not clay, something living. Clara couldn't move. Her knees buckled, her breath caught. The doll walked forward, not with steps, but with jerks. Backward bending joints cracked with every motion. It moved like something remembering what walking was supposed to look like. And then it climbed her. Fingers dug into her skin, not as hands, but like roots. It pressed its face to hers. The porcelain was cold, but beneath it something revved. Something alive. Its smile touched her skin, and for a moment she felt nothing, and then everything. Memories not hers, screams not her voice. A room, this room, being used again and again to break the spirit of children. Laughter that wasn't joy, smiles that weren't real. A ritual repeated, a spirit rehoused. She felt every soul this doll had worn. Every child it had become, and in the center of it all, a name whispered over and over like a sermon of hells. Maisie, 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 but Clara screamed, came, but no sound came because her voice had already been taken. Too, she was found 3 days later naked, wandering the woods, eyes open wide, smile frozen, repeating, troll. The grin has roots, the grin has roots. Her body was alive, but her mind had been replaced. The Harrow house was searched, but the nursery was gone. Where the door once stood was now solid wall, as if it had never existed, except in the attic a new doll sat on the rocking chair. It looked newer, fresher, but the face, oh the face, was unmistakable. Hazel eyes, short auburn hair, porcelain skin with faint, fresh cracks at the corners of the mouth. And the smile deeper than ever, because it was Clara now. She had become the next face, the next vessel, the next mask for that ancient, smiling curse. And Maisie. Maisie was no longer just the doll. She was the spirit behind the smile, the thing that does not die because it never lived, a demon of imitation, a shadow that mimics the child, but carries the abyss. Her smile is her weapon. Her innocence is her disguise, and now she waits again for the next lonely heart, the next open door, the next curious hand. The next soul willing to believe a smile means safety. But not all smiles are born of love. Some are sown with sorrow, painted in blood, and worn by spirits who were never children at all. Fi ein el war and img. Tor, be careful what you touch.